In this video, we're going to look at converting between decimals and percents. That is, taking numbers that are in decimal form and rewriting them as a percent, taking numbers that are percents and rewriting them as decimals. Let's start out by looking at the word percent. It's really made up of two pieces. Per, which mathematically tells us to divide by, and cent, which, if we think about the term cent, there are 100 cents in a dollar, there are 100 years in a century, so the word cent tells us the number 100 is going to be important. So literally, the word percent tells us that we need to divide by 100. For example, if we look at 27%, what that's telling us is that this means 27 divided by 100, which, if we actually perform that division, we get the number 0.27. And so what we've got here is two things that are equivalent to each other are 27% written as a percent and then written as a decimal 0.27. Dividing by 100 will always work when we want to convert a percent into a decimal. Something that people also think about when converting a percent to a decimal is, well, what if I just move the decimal point 2 places? For example, if we have the number 35% and I want to convert that percent into a decimal. Well, right now it's 35, so a decimal point would be here. If I move that decimal point 2 places, and now I've got 0.35, I've rewritten my percent as a decimal. That process of moving the decimal point 2 places to the left to convert a percent to a decimal will certainly work for you. Let's look at a couple more examples. If we have, say, 4% that we're trying to convert to a decimal, it might occur to you to say, well, okay, 4%, so that's 0.4. Well, be a little careful there. Remember, we need to move the decimal point 2 places, or it's 4 divided by 100. So if you're moving the decimal point 2 places, you can see that we're going to have to drop a 0 in there. And when we convert this to a decimal, it's going to be 0.04. Also, if you did 4 divided by 100, that's 4 hundredths, so we want to make sure we go to the hundredths place. And then something that might be a little challenging, something strange like 0.2%. That's really small. If I do 0.2 divided by 100, that will work. And I can also move the decimal point 2 places, and now the decimal point's going to be here, and I can see that I'm going to have 2 zeros in front, and so I'm going to have 0.002 will correspond to 2%. That's converting percents into decimals. Now let's take a look at going the other direction, where we will convert decimals into percents. The first one we'll look at is 0.75, which is written as a decimal. We're going to turn that into a percent. When we wanted to convert a percent to a decimal, we divided by 100. So if we're going to convert a decimal to a percent, now we are going to multiply by 100. You can think of it as multiplying by 100. You can also think of it as moving the decimal point 2 places to the right, so that 0.75, when written as a percent, is going to be 75%. Kind of makes sense if you think about it. 0.75 would be 75 hundredths, and that's 75%. Let's look at another one. Say 0.31. If I want to convert that into a percent, I'm going to move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and I'm going to have 31%. And then one that we got to make sure we're really careful when we have really small numbers like 0.07. Now I don't want to just call this 70%. I want to be careful. I want to move my decimal point 2 places, and this is going to be 7%. Converting decimals to percent and percents to decimals is going to be an important part of a lot of the problems we do, so make sure you're comfortable with this process before you start working on those problems.